Yeah, so we're back. Radar Radio, Neighbourhood Radio. Myself, Chuckie Online Benny Scarrs. We got Austin Darbo in the house. What's going on, my brother?
Yeah, man, all good, man. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I feel very privileged to follow some great names that have been in this studio, man. Yeah, the Fraser T. Smith interview was inspiring. I saw that you guys had Darkus in here as well, president of Island Records, man. I wish I could have achieved even a tenth of what them men have achieved. You know what I'm saying?
You're on your way, though. You're on your way. I mean, like, let's look at it. Because, I mean, for some people who don't know, you were once head of music at Radio 1 Extra and doing playlisting at Radio 1 as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we'll talk about. And now you're at Spotify, a senior editor and programming there. And you're young.
Ish.
You know what I mean? There's no grey in the beard. There's no grey in the beard. It's joints. You know what I mean? You're on your way, G.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, I feel privileged. I mean, I started in this industry quite young. You know, my first break in the music industry in terms of full-time job. I was just turning 20, and I got the second most, in terms of playlisting, the second most influential position at One Extra, man. So I really landed on my feet in terms of that very first break. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I feel privileged. Just happy to be here, happy to be on the pitch playing and contributing, man, to this industry.
Talking about being on the pitch playing, I feel that you and your team were quite instrumental in, what happened with Stormzy's album, which was amazing. Can you just put a little bit into perspective of, how amazing Stormzy did streaming-wise for his album in the first week?
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I think, first of all, in terms of like Spotify's influence on that Stormzy campaign, I just see us as we're just a conduit between the people, the fans, and the music. We're not gatekeepers. We're just the ignition, that sort of starts everything off. And if you look at what Stormzy done, he had 20 million streams last week. He was the most streamed artist in the whole of the UK. That's above Ed Sheeran, above Adele, above Drake, Tiny Temper. And the maddest thing is that, quite often when we talk about grime artists, we always have to qualify their stats. So quite often it will be like, it's the biggest selling grime album ever, or the most streams for a grime or urban artist. Nah, Stormzy had the most amount of streams in the whole of the UK across all platforms, but especially Spotify last week, man. That's mental. And then it's and sales wise as well. In total we did 68,000 sales. Album sales are on a downwards trajectory. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not dead. Definitely not. There's still life in albums yet. But if you look at what first week sales numbers were coming in at 10 years ago compared to now, they're relatively anemic. Do you know what I'm saying? Consumption habits have changed in terms of the way that people are sort of getting albums, into their headphones and through the speakers. So
until Ed came and released his record this week, and I just checked the midweek and saw like 330,000 or something.
425 at the last count, man. Do you know what I mean? By the time this goes out, it could clock 500-600. Do you know what I'm saying?
God.
Which shows that if you make an incredible enough piece of work, people will gravitate towards it. And what we saw on Spotify was people came in unprecedented numbers to go towards Spotify, to listen to Stormzy's album. Yeah. And one last thing with Stormzy is that we shouted about Stormzy a lot. We put out a TV advert. We really believed in Stormzy, and we definitely made sure that we programmed in our most important lists. But he's a grime artist. There's only a few amount of lists that he can actually sit in.
Yeah.
And when you actually do the numbers, he only sat in 5 of our playlists.
That's insane.
The vast majority of listening came from Stormzy fans going on Spotify, searching for Stormzy and consuming him. Do you know what I'm saying?
So that's even more of a powerful thing to be in, because you have people that are you have a large amount of numbers that are specifically going just to hear that, and not even so much of a thing of it's just being like thrown in their face or whatever it may be, or it's just there. Like people actually going to it to actually really listen to it.
Exactly that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's all on that boy, man. So yeah, it's a once in a generation artist that's come through, and hopefully he'll be the first of many.
All right. So you're at One Extra. You're the head of music. Streaming now is becoming a thing.
But yeah, and this is important because, radio, for as long as I've worked in music, has been the number one gatekeeper for, I guess, record labels wanting to get that Radio 1 A-list. That was, and maybe for some still is, considered like the number one way to get your music to the people. And that is just something that was renowned industry-wide. Now, there has been a shift, you know, and the shift is still happening in terms of like the relevance and the power of another medium coming through. That radio has not been, there's been nothing rivaling it ever, really. It's been the number one thing to break music through, you know, perhaps TV shows or the X Factor, whatever, but really on a general music basis, you know. So anyway, we see the rise of streaming, and, you know, the likes of Spotify and various other streaming platforms they've been around, they've been bubbling. I didn't really understand them myself personally, probably until the last 12 months.
Definitely, yeah.
Like, I didn't really understand them. I knew that if I talked to, and I'm working music, if I talk to my friends that do regular jobs, they couldn't even get their head around it. Now, I knew that things had changed, right? When I went to my friend Dean's house, a very good friend of ours who is a gas man. He drives a white van. He's a gas man. He does not work in the music business. Now, Dean he's a very straightforward man. And I went to his house one day, and he said to me, "Rah!" He said, "Have you got that Spotify?" He said, look at my playlist. He said, "Look at my playlist." And he had like 50, 60 tracks that he's put into his own playlist. And I couldn't believe it, because I was like, wow, like, this is not a man that is out there into like new media or new technology or gadgets or nothing like that. He's just a man that would be getting someone to put some tunes on a USB for him.
100%.
Do you get what I'm saying? So, Austin, from your perspective, as someone who's worked in radio and been a huge champion of the BBC and 1Extra and Radio 1, how do you see that transition? Where did that happen, and how did you view it?
You know what? I just think, you know, like you said, radio hasn't had a serious rival for breaking new music ever, really. Yeah. But consumption habits changed. You know what I'm saying? Like, most ideas that we take for granted now seemed crazy when you first spoke about them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if someone was like, if someone sort of, you know, gave the concept of the iPod when it first came out, when everyone was using tapes and CDs, you'd be like, what are you on about? Like, one little device that's got all of my music? Like, what do you mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, so with streaming, it's the same thing, man. It took a while for people to really get into it. But once the penny dropped as to how convenient it was, how convenient it was, how powerful it could be in terms of as a music discovery service, and how entertaining in some cases it could be. I just think people just started to switch over in their millions. Do you know what I'm saying? And similar to like Netflix, when it comes to, or Amazon Prime, when it comes to video consumption, you're now thinking, why the hell didn't we think of this sooner? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and for me in radio, I saw the change a few years ago, you know, around about the time when Spotify launched in the UK. It was kind of like, I kind of thought to myself then, you know what, if they get this right, and they get the right people doing the right playlists, or the right algorithms serving up the right playlists, this potentially could be something that rivals kind of what we do at radio. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's proven to be the case that, you know, the number one place for music discovery globally now is Spotify.
Can I say, for the first time in my lifetime, I was almost anti the new thing. I'd always embraced all the new stuff prior to that, but I was a little bit anti-stream, only because I didn't understand it really. I just didn't really get it. But I say that to say this, like, what do you feel now, and especially with me understanding streaming more and seeing how important it has become, has streaming saved the music industry? Because, you know, there was a time where, you know what, like, people were just downloading music, people were streaming stuff for free, they were doing all of that stuff, and people were losing out a lot of money. Artists were losing out a lot of money on that. Now you can subscribe for a small fee, with the amount that you stream, with me being a person who, if I like a song, I just rewind it over and over and over and over and over again. Now that's something that counts. Has Spotify and streaming in general saved the music industry from your perspective?
There's absolutely no doubt that Spotify and streaming services have put the value back in the music industry, and you've only got to look at the hard, cold facts because of that. I mean, you only have to look at the cold, hard facts. 1 in every £3 generated in the music industry at the moment is coming from Spotify, from recorded music. Universal, Sony, Warner, all posting record profits from music sales, and there's been an upward trajectory in loads of key music markets for the first time. You look at France; they just announced their first rise in music industry value in 15 years. There's absolutely no doubt that we're putting the value back in the music industry, especially if you're an unsigned or an independent artist. I had an artist, an MC, coming to see me at Spotify 2 weeks ago. A mid-level MC that some of the listeners would have heard of, and this person said that they get between £4,000 and £6,000 a month off their digital distributor from Spotify and other streaming service royalties. If we're talking about 3 or 4 years ago, that would have been a few hundred sales on iTunes, and you would have probably just about made back the cost of your artwork and your music video. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now some real money's being earned. There's no doubt that we've put the value back in the music industry and placed the value on money as well, a value on music as well.
Yeah.
Daniel Ek, who's sort of my boss's boss, the founder and owner of Spotify, one of the co-owners of Spotify, started Spotify to try and solve the piracy problem that was happening in Sweden and also globally. And if you think about the average music consumer, if you think about what we call, like I said, the Lamborghini girls, the sort of commercial music consumer, quite often a female, some studies have been done. And globally, a music fan, someone who was into music, might spend about $50 a year on music. If you've got a Spotify subscription, you're spending $100 plus now a year. If you think about the average consumer in the UK who's on Spotify, and we just announced, we've got 50 million subscribers worldwide, and in the UK, we're definitely punching above our weight in terms of subscriber numbers. That is Sue from Lincoln now paying £120 potentially if she's on the $9.99 deal a year. So definitely, man, we're putting the value back in the music industry.
Yeah, it's insane. I got to say, from my perspective, it's mad that we've been working in a business that's been in decline for the whole time that we've been working in it, and always kind of lucky probably that we didn't see the golden years of the 90s and early 2000s, because I didn't know what we were missing. Do you know what I'm saying? But it is great to be able to think, yes, you can have a career without having to be at the very top of the music business. But you know what? On the consumer side of things, it's just it's got to the point where it's difficult to go online and try and find whatever album that you want on a download link, and you might get a virus, and you might not get the full high quality thing. You know what? I just paid a tenner. It's just kind of...
It's calm.
It's kind of
I think
easier,
people want convenience, do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
brother.
But
It's
also,
not long.
completely. And also you've got this thing called, that people call the tyranny of choice. And, if you look at the amount of music that is put up available, you think about that Spotify home screen even, and how much new music you're sort of confronted with. And what we're trying to do is bring order to the chaos. Because if you're a fan of music and you try and delve into the rabbit hole that is Google, and try and you type new music into Google and see how many millions of results come up. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've got this thing where it's an endless buffet of music, and quite often, like I was talking about what we were saying at the very start of this conversation, people are creatures of habit. You're confronted with this endless buffet of music, and just like when you are at a Chinese buffet and it's mad dishes all over the place, you go to the sesame toast, you go to the chicken wings, and you go to the the black bean fried sauce. But you just go to what you know. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you're confronted with this mad choice and the tsunami of music that's at our doorstep. At Spotify, we ingest about 12,000 records a week into our system. Do you know what I'm saying? That's just in the UK. There's a mad amount of music being presented. So what we're trying to do is bring order to the chaos and say, right, out of this massive treasure trove of music, we're going to try and pick out the best gems, the best hits, and the best records that we think that you might like to hear if you're a fan of this music, which sounds similar to it.
Okay. So what exactly do you do on a day-to-day basis at Spotify?
What I do in the simplest way possible in terms of explaining it is I listen to music and I add music that I like to playlists that I think the audience will like.
Okay.
That is what I do. So I'm a senior editor at Spotify. I'm one of 2 senior editors at Spotify in the UK, and we oversee the editorial output of Spotify.
Okay.
So when you go onto Spotify and you click on the browse or the homepage, what's called the carousel, which is, you know, the boxes of different playlists.
Yeah.
It's me and my team that decide what order you should see those playlists in, the songs that those playlists are on, what the artwork looks like, the editorial voice of Spotify, i.e. the non-algorithm based playlists. That's what me and my team look after.
Okay. And also, just to be clear as well, because I was doing a podcast the other day and we was someone asked me this question.
You had a great debate.
How did you know? You listened to it?
No, you had a great debate about whether, you know, the playlist thing was like, it was like feeding people the right music, or if it took away choice. You know, I was having a big debate about that.
Yeah, that's not the part that I was going to
Save that one for another
I was
day.
sitting there thinking I got my opinions on this, but yeah, anyway, go on.
Yeah. So how does it work in terms of how do you stream an album, an amount of streams? How does it total up to an album sale physically? Is it? I remember you tweeting something along the lines of 1,000 streams is the equivalent of a physical album sale. Is that correct?
So basically the formula is the OCC, which is the official charts company. What they do is that however long an album is, even if your album is 20 tracks long, the OCC take out the top 12 best performing tracks on your album. So if you've got 12 tracks on an album and you've got 2 tracks that are more popular than the others, so they've got 2 million streams each, and then the other 10 tracks have got 1 million streams each, what they'll do is that they'll take the lowest performing 10 tracks, so they'll skip out the 2 tracks, work out an average amount of streams across those 12 tracks, and then downweight those top 2 performing tracks to the average of those 10 tracks. Yeah.
And then add up the 12
And then,
averages,
so then they add up the streams for all 12 of those records and then divide it by 1,000. And then that's how many album sale equivalents that you've had.
Okay.
So when I say one album sale equals 1,000 streams, it's a slightly more complicated process in terms of how they work it out.
Fair play.
But that's basically it. So total amount of streams of your biggest 12 records on your album divided by 1,000.
Okay. And also, how much are the streams now accounting for in terms of how much is being sold in the charts? So, for example, Stormzy's album, how much streams did he get compared to the physical sale of his album? Do you know, percentage wise? Did he get more streams percentage wise?
He got 20,000 albums, so he sold 68,000 albums. Let's just say 70,000 albums.
Yeah,
and 20,000 of those albums were album stream equivalents.
Okay.
So yeah, you kind of have like a third. Ish, do you know what I'm saying? So like a third.
And is it the same? Would you say that it's the same for literally everyone now in terms of?
Totally depends. So you know, an artist like David Bowie, for example, David Bowie, had a much higher percentage of physical sales.
Okay.
You know, an artist like Rag and Bone Man, for example, might have a higher percentage of digital MP3, like sort of traditional Amazon, iTunes sales.
Okay.
And then you get, you know, other artists where it's purely like it's like 90% streams in their sales. It just depends.
Just so I'm clear, that it's literally circumstantial, depending on the artist and, you know, maybe even
and their fan base,
their fan
exactly.
base and all of that.
Exactly
stuff.
that.
So you'll
you know
get
what
some
I'm saying?
artists that will sell predominantly still more physical stuff, and then you'll get like, you know, probably even more is new generation artists that are predominantly streams now.
Yeah,
Or
there are
is it-
some.
is it
Yeah,
like that?
exactly. Yeah, there
Okay.
are some, and there are some older generation artists who over-index on streaming. Do you know what I'm saying? So it just depends. The singles chart's a lot clearer. The singles chart is, streaming makes up a large proportion of the singles chart. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, yeah.
So look, if I'm an artist, right, and I wanted to come and see you at your radio job, right? I know I can get a plugger, or maybe I might have some kind of in as a relationship, but I can come and present my track or get my track presented or whatever that it might be to hopefully get some plays and therefore get a playlist. With the streaming world, how does it work? You say you sit there, you're listening to music, you're coming across music. How do I, as an artist, get my music in front of Austin? How do I do it?
You know what? I would say the best way is to make it hot on the street, man. Like, make it bang on the road, man. If you're making that kind of music. Now, obviously, if you're an acoustic soul singer, do you know what I mean? And your journey's going to be different, man. But people kind of know what I do and the music that I have been brought onto Spotify to try and bust, and that's kind of urban music with a focus on street sounds. There is no better way to discover music than hearing it in public. Do you know what I mean? And hearing a reaction to it. So being in a coffee bar and being like, what's this playing over the speakers? Or being in a nightclub and a DJ dropping a record and like the reaction that I saw when Done Talking was played for the first time was like, whoa, do you know what I'm saying? So that's the best way. If you want to go the way where you want to sort of come in the office and have a meeting or whatever it might be, we get far too much music sent to us and far too many submissions for me to be able to meet everyone, unfortunately. Do you know what I'm saying? It just can't happen. I physically don't have enough hours in the day. The best way is to get your distributor to pitch it to us. So a distributor will be a company like Cobalt, TuneCore, Ditto. These are all distributors that can upload they've got the ability to upload music directly onto Spotify. It's not like SoundCloud or YouTube at the moment where users can upload directly onto Spotify. There's still like a gatekeeper process via a distributor. We're looking at ways in which we can help the creative community potentially in the future, but for now that's kind of where we're at. So I would say that if you're an artist, holler at your distributor, or at the point at which you're uploading your music on these distribution websites, contact them and ask them to pitch the record to the playlist team. We have weekly meetings with distributors, record labels and aggregator services where they pitch their priority acts to us. And that's the best way to get it in front of us on an official capacity. But in terms of you just hustling and doing your thing, you have to make it hot on a blog, on a website, with your local community. People quite often try to skip straight to the internet. What about your school? What about your college? Go house to house, knocking on doors, old school style. Look at the way Stormzy was campaigning. He was campaigning like it was like he was going for the prime minister role. Do you know what I mean? Like door to door, old school style, man. Like, take some lessons from that, man. Copy what other people have done. Take the best bits from all these different campaigns that you've seen. Do you know what I mean? And mold them into your own, man. But just to reiterate my point one last time, make your peer group fuck with your music, and we'll notice it. We always do.
100%. I mean, the business has and a lot because of the streaming platforms has kind of flipped on its head. I guess as many artists as can break via Spotify is a good thing, and it's not like you know what, there's only actually room for one of these artists on this playlist or on this show, and it therefore puts the power back in the hands of the fans and the audience and the people, and what they want to hear dictates, I guess, what you guys are gonna playlist and what you guys are gonna boost up the playlist. And I know there's a lot of data and a lot of stats that you guys look at, and it's real time
analytics
do
you know what I mean?
Feedback.
You know what I would say, like when Chuckie is as an open format DJ, when Chuckie's at a club and he flings on a song, and it's a song that the manager's told him it's a big record, but he's not 100% sure, but he's going to play it because he rates the manager, he rates the artist, he's going to play this new record, and the club dance floor's packed, and then Chuckie presses play on the record, and 3/4 of the dance floor stop dancing and start moving towards the bar. Chuckie looks at that and says, that's a 75% skip rate. Do you know what I'm saying? And all we're doing is playing DJ with a much larger pool of people. Do you know what I mean? Because analytics, people kind of tend to use it as though it's like a new thing. It's not a new thing. From the time of classical music, do you know what I'm saying? They were using your eyes and ears to analyze the data in front of you and how people were reacting to music, do you know what I'm saying? And then making a decision on what music you'd stop playing, start playing, compose, not compose, etc., based on the reaction that you'd get.
Yeah.
And at Spotify, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
We just have an incredibly detailed viewpoint on the way music's being consumed. Do you know what I'm saying? And we always use our gut because, you know, at a point at which we decide to put a record on the playlist, there is no data on that record.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
we're constantly using our gut feeling to say, is this record going to work on Grime Shutdown?
Yeah.
Is this record really going to react on a chart basis, or is it really going to have impact if we put it on Hot Hits UK, which is like our biggest playlist in the UK and one of the biggest globally? But we're always using our gut feeling, but then backing that up with really, really strong analytics and data.
It's a beautiful thing to see somebody loving their job as much as you're loving it publicly. Because, you know, I'm looking, Austin, and I'm like, obviously we talk, but regardless, I'm like, my man loves his job, you know. And there's a lot of people that don't love their job, though. No, seriously, there's a lot of people that don't love your job. Like, what is it? Like, you are so passionate, like, honestly. And like, that, yeah, that's a great thing to see. Like, but what is it? Like, why
Great
are you loving
people.
it? Like,
It's great people, great management, great company. It's a Swedish company. It's a Swedish tech company. Do you know what I mean? And Scandinavian companies, they're famed for how well they treat their staff.
Yeah.
Tech companies are famed, some are, for how they treat their staff. So having a Swedish tech company, they look after you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't even just mean they financially look after you. Do you know what I'm saying? But they make you feel worthy. They invest in their staff.
I've seen the fridge in the kitchen area.
The fridge is
Never
wild.
been. You got to invite me down there.
Yo,
That's
fully
fridge
stocked.
is
That's
wild.
one place we haven't had a
I was
little
like,
catch up
yo,
yet.
trust
You want a
me.
coconut water, Chuck?
Is it? Yeah.
It's there.
Variety.
You want some
Yeah.
almond milk, Chuck?
Serious.
That's what sold it. When George
Really?
told me about the
It's
fridge,
there.
I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Plus other things, obviously. If you're watching this, George. But yeah, no. But so yeah, no. You know, and I've got a great team. Do you know what I mean? I work with the best curation team in the world.
Yeah.
I've got George Ogatudis, man. Music industry legend. Like, when he finally decides to hang up his boots, like, he's that Fergie of the music industry, the Sir Alex Ferguson of the music industry. Do you know what I mean? I've got James Foley, man, who's smashed it as a journalist and who's been killing it. He was the only person that's an editor on Spotify. Do you know what I mean? At one point, so he was doing his thing, smashing it. I've got Rob Khan and Sarah and Dexter, who obviously came from the BBC. They worked at Radio 2, 6 Music, One Extra Radio 1. We are we're the strongest curation team in the land. Do you know what I mean? I'm quite bullish about that. Do you know what I mean? And the numbers are kind of backing up that claim, man. Because every single playlist that everyone's working on is doing a madness right now. And I'll be honest with you. And you know, it's great to be at a company where you can see the results of your action. You know, I was at One Extra for a long time, and you know, because of the way that radio listening is measured.
Yeah.
We could see that One Extra was growing in importance and stature, but every time those listening figures would come through, it would be like 900,000, 910,000, a million, 900,000. Do you know what I mean? It would always bubble around the million mark. Do you know what I'm saying? When we kind of knew that something more was potentially going on. But at Spotify, we can see household to household the reaction that we're having. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, man, it's
amazing.
good.
Well, you know what? I'll end it on this. Because I didn't understand streaming too much, I went to Apple Music, and I feel bad about that. Because I see him talking about it. And every time I mention it, people are tweeting me like,
give him a promo code.
Give him a promo code. Tweeting me like, Chucks, what are you doing, bro? Like, come on. So you know what? I've been meaning to say it just for you. Just for you, I'm cancelling that membership and I'm going Spotify. Yeah, I'll let you know when I've done it. If you got a promo code, bust me on that.
Yeah, man, I'm sure, man. We can bust you on that, man. But look, I would just say to anyone, man, anyone can sign up with any streaming services. And then when you're done, come over to the real side. You know what I mean? Because, like, you know, we know we've got a killer product. We know that we've got some killer playlists. We've got some killer, you know, we've got some killer ideas that we want to work with artists on. Look at how we worked with Stormzy to deliver a campaign for him on Spotify that helped put the music in front of the fans. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, you're going to see, and you already have seen, some of the help that we've given Mist, JK, do you know what I mean? Jay Hussu's album's about to drop. I don't know if that's
looking forward to that.
I don't know if that's public or not. So
No, well,
yeah.
I think that's kind of.
Well, he's
doing
it'll
a
drop
tour,
at
so he
some
just
point.
dropped that. So
It's
obviously he's
coming,
gonna
it's
drop
coming.
one. Yeah.
So we're just trying to smash it. We want to break as many artists as possible. Do you know what I mean? There's space for everyone. This isn't radio. This isn't TV. We've got thousands of spots, hundreds of thousands of spots in which we can break artists, man. So come, upload your music, holler at me.
100%.
Let's try and bust.
I
your
can
music.
say firsthand, like, the job that you're doing is phenomenal.
Big
Like,
up, man.
and I'm really glad that we got to sit down and have this conversation. I think it's like a very interesting new angle, especially, you know, the latter half of this conversation with the Spotify angle and the stats and the analytics and everything that you're saying. I'm very excited to see where it's gonna go. I definitely think that it is putting life back into the, you know, into the music business and helping turn things around. And I'm just happy to have somebody like Austin in the building. So
Big up, man.
It's been great to sit down, man. Thanks for coming through, bro.
Definitely, man.
Nice
Thank
one,
you,
my
man.
brother. Yeah, man. This is why I love having these conversations.